And start. All right. So I'm here with Eddie Newman of Prosperity Gospel, a post-black metal band from right here in Columbia. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
Yeah, so please feel free to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do in the band, a little bit about Prosperity Gospel.
Yeah, so it started out as a solo project I was doing, where I did all the vocals and guitars, and then did out of the box. I used drum machines and a bass synthesizer for our first record, and then people started to like it a little bit, and everyone was asking when we were going to play a show, and I was like, there's no real chance of that because it's just me. And then I'd say within 6 months or so of releasing it, I started to put a band together. We started playing the songs.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're the main kind of creative force behind the band.
Yeah, but everybody in the band brings something to it. And we've written a good amount of new music since the first record, which obviously has more input from everybody else on it. But even the original record that we don't play it exactly the same as it is on the record, because people, for instance, I'm not a bass player, so our bass players added a lot of cool layers to it. I'm not a drummer, so our drummers added a lot to it. I'm not a lead guitar player. Our lead guitar players added a lot to it, so it's definitely a different beast than just what's on the record now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, how'd you get started in music? I remember we communicated a little bit over Instagram a while ago, and you had mentioned some past bands, Prosperity Gospel is not your first band, right?
Yeah, no, I always was in bands, starting out, I guess it would have been in middle school. I literally got a guitar and a guitar amp because we were making a band, one of those. It was everybody needs to buy instruments because we're gonna make a band, sort of thing. Yeah, and so I've been in a lot of punk bands, some hardcore, not too much metal. I played drums for a live setting for another one person black metal band back in the day, but I hadn't really done too much compositionally or guitar based, more on the metal side of stuff. So this is kind of new for me in that. Also, I haven't really played live for a while until this last year. I've been doing a lot of solo stuff, some recording projects that were never meant to be played live anyway. So it's really cool being back into the playing actual shows with other bands and meeting people and getting nervous before you get on stage. It's all fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. How was that kind of coming back from COVID to playing shows and stuff? How's that been?
Well, it's given me a good way to sort of get out of the habit of just being in my house all the time. It's hard to regularly see people, and having band practice is awesome because it's something people aren't going to skip out on, because it's sort of a more of a commitment than hey, we're all going to go hang out and watch this movie or whatever. So that's cool, and it's causing me to go different clubs that I normally don't go to, venues across the Southeast and stuff. So it's definitely helped with getting out there and seeing human beings again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I know you all have had a few shows recently, New Brooklyn and think most recently like Art Bar, and I've been
Mhm.
kicking myself for not being able to make any of those. But like how have those like been? Like how's like the turnout for those been?
It's been awesome. I think people are really excited to see live music again. So people are appreciative of it, and I do think there's like a million shows going on right now, so it's hard to hit all of them. But I do think people are like, hey, we didn't really have a chance to do this for a couple of years, so let's go out and enjoy ourselves and see some music. So yeah, the response has been great from it.
Yeah. It's awesome. But yeah, like your music kind of like post black metal, that's always been like a pretty intriguing like kind of subgenre for me, I guess. And like when I played it on my radio show for the first time, that really like seemed to kind of pique the interest of a lot of my listeners too. Like it was just kind of really well received. I had a lot of people like kind of reach out and tell me that they were into it. It's like how did you like get interested in such kind of like a whole niche subgenre like post black metal and decided that's what you wanted like prosperity gospel to be?
Um, that's kind of hard. In some ways, I don't really, I mean, a lot of like, gatekeeper purist kind of people would probably argue that we're not a black metal band, which is fine. And I might agree with them in some ways. Uh, but it was less of a like conscious decision to like strive for a certain sound, because like if you think about like most of the like real popular like what people would call post black, like you know Deaf Heaven for instance, or whatever, really don't sound like them at all. But it's one of those like genre tags kind of suck in general, but they're like a necessary evil. um but it's one of those things where it's like I want to call it something else, but anytime I go away from that tag, nothing else seems to be a better fit for it. Um, so we're kind of stuck with it. But yeah, I don't know. Uh, I try and take a very like sort of like harmonic approach to things. The songs, definitely have, like harmonic movement and stuff like that. It's not we're certainly not a big like chromatic kind of band. um and so I think that gets us put in that category sometimes. um yeah, I don't know if I really answered your question, but yeah, it's less of a shooting for a particular goal and more of I wrote a bunch of music. What's the best way to describe that batch of music? um and even the new stuff that we're writing is different in a lot of ways. Heavier in some senses, but also maybe less tropes of metal music in general.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely get that. It's kind of focused on like making what you want to make, not really like focused on like conforming to a genre, I guess. I think that's cool. But
Yeah. I definitely approach this, and at least my last few projects I've done, as like what sort of music would like I want to listen to, like what's something that maybe doesn't exist exactly that would scratch some itch for me. Um and I got in my car one day with someone, and I had a CD. The Prosperity Gospel CD was in the CD player, and they were like, "I can't believe you're like listening to this." And I was like, "Yeah, why would I, make something I didn't want to listen to? That's bonkers to me." Um, you know, uh, Certainly not doing it to get famous or rich. So it should be something you love at the end of the day.
yeah, for sure. hmm So like how did like you and like the other like members of like Prosperity Gospel like meet and get started as a band?
So it's kind of crazy because at this point, two other members of Prosperity Gospel are people I've played music with on and off for more than a decade. The So our drummer is this guy Mike Lambert. We grew up together. We played in a band together for a long time, and he just moved back to town, and we picked him up. Our lead guitar player Donald Josie. We played in a band together for a long time. We're good friends. And then our bass player actually had been in a bunch of bands up in Greenville. And I knew him, we're good friends, and he hadn't played in bands for a while either. And I was just like, hey, if you're down, I'm putting together a band. Do you want to be in it? And he said yes. And it's been great. Yeah. It's fun to play in a band with people you're friends with. Definitely helps. Being in a band is like being in a relationship. There's a lot of like communication and stuff. And I've definitely been in bands, and it's totally my fault, but I've been in bands that had really bad communication breakdowns in the past. And then if you're not communicating, then people are just being, either passive aggressive or just aggressive to each other. And so, maybe it's just because we're all older now and we've all, done this so many times at this point. But the communication feels very easy. Even if we're disagreeing on something, it's very like, open and, thoughtful, and, that's sort of, I would say one of the best things about it right now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you see a lot of bands like kind of fall apart and stuff from like just infighting between the members and stuff. It's really cool to hear that y'all like get along so well.
Yeah.
It's like the name Prosperity Gospel that kind of like invokes like sort of like maybe like critical religious connotation for me. And like I guess a lot of people like I've like told the name to have kind of like chuckled a little bit or like said that they like the name. Like I guess like where does that name come from, and like what does it like represent to you?
I would say on the get-go, we're not like an explicitly like anti-religious band. I think probably, maybe most, mainline evangelical people would probably say that we're blasphemous in some way, but that's not really the point. But prosperity gospel, or prosperity doctrine, which is like the better known phrase for that, is just like this really sort of like abusive system, like the Joel Osteens of the world, where basically these rich people that are telling poor people, you could be rich like me if you just give me more money. So it's sort of just like a sarcastic jab, at that, and sort of at like, capitalism in general. It's sort of based on this idea that the working class people just have to give a little bit more, and in that case, it's more like just give more labor, give more hours of your life, and you'd be rich like Jeff Bezos, which is just as much of a lie as, prosperity gospel is. So I'd say it's like that. It's also too, one of the other names that I thought about for it was Prosperity, South Carolina, which is a small town in South Carolina. It's certainly not, prosperous. And I just, I'm trying to evoke very, kind of like Southern, sort of struggles with what we do. So just having the name Prosperity in the name, to me at least, brings up Prosperity, South Carolina. But I think it's evocative for other people, because other people have asked me if it had anything to do with Prosperity, South Carolina. So hopefully that's at least subconsciously getting some people.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you're from Columbia, right? Like, are you like originally from Columbia?
Yeah, I was born in Columbia. I grew up in Aiken, which isn't too far away. So my like formative years were spent going across the river into Georgia, and playing a lot of music in Augusta, which was kind of like a second home, as a young person. But I've been back in Columbia for God, I guess going on 15 years now. So I've been here for a while. I love it.
Yeah. Yes, like are all the band members from Columbia or like South Carolina?
Yeah, they're all from South Carolina. Um, yeah.
Cool. Yes, like how do you feel like that like kind of plays into like your influences? Because I know that you said that like you have like sort of like I guess draw on like South Carolina for like I guess like kind of influence in the band. Like how do you feel like that kind of comes into play?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the the like ecology of South Carolina is very interesting to me. Um, and there's even songs that are like pretty explicitly about
Mhm.
southern coastal ecology. One of the songs is Pine Needles and Swamp Gas,
Mhm.
which are obviously both two very southern coastal phenomena. But they're also like like representative of like something else that's wrong. Like pine needles are like horrible for the soil. They like acidify it. So basically, as pine trees grow and become successful, they're basically choking out like life in the undergrowth. Um, we there's a lot of like cicada imagery. Like
Yeah.
our logo has some cicadas in it. Um, and the album itself has a lot of like cicada noise sort of interstitial to the tracks. And so that's something I've grown up with, and as a little kid didn't really think anything about it. I always thought it was cool. But growing up and being a musician and stuff, and I see the comparison between like cicada drones and like maybe a German minimalist drone project or something. And so that sort of stuff, like those sort of connections you can make, I think are really cool. um and yeah, I just think South Carolina is a cool place because we have some of the most like corrupt politicians, and some of the worst like living conditions, but we also have this like beautiful and deadly ecology as well, which is interesting to me.
Yeah. That's really cool. So yes, your first album, Violently Pulled from Bliss, that was released March 2021 on Spotify. So that's like just over a year old now.
Mhm.
Like it's like what was like your vision for that album when you were like kind of writing songs and putting it all together?
So I think that record is 7 songs long. I'm pretty sure. I think I wrote about like 11 or 12 songs for it, and I ended up abandoning a lot of them. And so I think my goal with that, as far as like talking about it as a record, I wanted it to be like cohesive, but I didn't want any of the songs to sound like the other songs. And I focused a lot on like transitions between songs, and like for me that's really important. I don't like records where it's just like each song is an individual unit that can exist outside of the whole. And I also tried to pace it in such a way that it gave a little bit of like redemption at the end. It's certainly like a dark record, but actually that song I was just talking about, uh, Swamp Gas, Pine Needles and Swamp Gas, is towards the end, and it sort of has like this big sort of like cavernous like arena rock feel to certain parts of it, and it's meant to be like a little bit uplifting, in a sort of sarcastic way, or in a sort of like dark way. And then the album ends with just like a really sludgy, down-tuned mess of a song. And it's sort of like we can go through all these like human processes. That record's mostly just like philosophical stuff. It's a little bit political, but I'd say it's most of the lyrics are just philosophical stuff. And then it's kind of the ending of it is kind of a rejection of that, and it's kind of like, yeah, we're still bags of meat living down in the swamps, like it, all this kind of like high-mindedness to a certain extent doesn't really matter when, the coastlines are rising and, there's not gonna be enough food for everybody. So that was sort of the feeling I wanted to put in from the record, be like, hey, here's my thoughts on, you know, uh, coming to existence and stuff. And then here are my thoughts on why it might not even be worth, arguing about those things. So that's sort of how I structured it. And we do play several of those songs live now in our live show, albeit mixed in with a bunch of other stuff.
That's really cool. Are there any like specific bands that like kind of influenced the album or that you drew on for influence, or was it just all like what you kind of like wanted it to be?
I wouldn't say that there were any super strong direct influences on it. When I was writing it, I was listening to a whole lot of Sisters of Mercy. So if any of it seems a little bit like gothy, maybe that's why. But let me think about this. I like really kind of like dense, compositions and stuff like that. So I would say, maybe bands that we don't sound like, but that we, I try and have the same level of sort of like intricacies. Like Nick Cave would be one of them, where I look to him for like songwriting inspiration, if not like sonic inspiration. Yeah, these are all just bands that don't sound anything like us. I'd say also Pixies was probably my biggest songwriting influence growing up, and I'll never be able to leave what the Pixies did for me in terms of music appreciation behind. And I feel like any music I write for the rest of my life will be at least 1% influenced by Pixies. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah.
But there are, if you're looking for bands that sort of like, because obviously those recommendations aren't good if somebody likes our band, maybe. There's a band, they're out of England. I think they're a Sheffield band, if I'm not mistaken, called Baal, BA''AL. And I've been listening to them recently, and they're killer. And I think that they do some similar things to us. They might be a little bit like heavier, but they have some of the same sort of like very like chord based, harmonically moving music. So maybe that's one good recommendation.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I've never heard of them before. I'll definitely have to give them a listen. Would you say that you have a favorite song off the album?
I'm not really like a song person. I honestly like barely ever know the names of songs that I'm listening to. The record's called Ellipsis. Let me see here. Ellipsism. Yeah, I can't even get the name of the album right. Yeah, they're from Sheffield. I just pulled it up. Yeah, I don't typically, I'm not like a single person. So like if a record comes out that's like 2 songs, I'm probably not going to listen to it. Nothing against it, but like I just like to put on something and listen to it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise you feel like a DJ, which is fun for you, but for me, while I'm like busy, it's a hassle to be constantly making decisions. That's one of the good things about the radio. I was actually talking to somebody about this recently, and they were like, and they're from New York, and they were saying they're so glad that all of the clubs have opened up. And he was like, it's so nice to go to a club and have a DJ just pick out the music for you and like take that agency away from you, and into somebody else's hands. So that's that's all just an explanation of why I don't know any of the song names of any records I listen to.
I think, yeah. But from Prosperity Gospel, like Violently Pulled from Bliss, I think the song like I keep coming back to is The Gleaners. I think that's like probably my favorite song off that album. Like, what's that song like about? Does that have any like special significance to you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've had lots of people say that to me, and that was one song that I almost didn't put on the record because I was like, oh, people are gonna hate this. And then I was like, no, I like it. I'm gonna put it on. We actually just played that at our show at Art Bar. But yeah, it's sort of it's a theme that I think I maybe do a better job of exploring on one of our newer songs. Um, but it's sort of this like this view of like the what am I trying to say? The like transcendence of like humanity, like this idea of like, oh, humankind is so different and special because we have like the ability to reason, we have consciousness and stuff like that. And then the song is basically refutation of that, and it's saying, yeah, but it hasn't really helped us. It hasn't made us like better. If anything, like consciousness, the line in the song is like, consciousness betrayed us. Because really like all it does is sort of like open up like new avenues for, like suffering and, forms of violence that don't really exist in nature. And, we're not necessarily better off than a creature that doesn't have consciousness because the creature is not aware of it. Like, so there's nothing to even compare it to, so the song is just like, it's very simple, but it's basically just two situations, and it's about basically like a boardroom trying to figure out how to, extract more resources from, the world and their labor force and stuff. And then the counterpoint to it is sort of the modern day like romantic counter to that, which is like somebody extracting themselves from society, like almost like a like Unabombery kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like they're both just they're two different ways that we like flaunt our consciousness, that are basically worthless and like meaningless. And like it's as meaningless to be a stockbroker whose stocks went up 1% today than it is to be a person who is going to live out in a army tent in the woods. Like I think maybe aesthetically people would like one over the other, but like at the end of the day, it's just kind of people LARPing, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you like that song. We really like playing it. We just put it back into the set. We haven't played it the last few shows until this one at Art Bar. And it's very fun to play. And I started taking the solo on it, which is pretty fun because it's not something I normally do. I'm not a very flashy guitar player, so it's fun to occasionally do something a little bit flashy.
Yeah, for sure. Do y'all have any more shows like planned out or on the books or anything?
Yeah, I don't think the lineup's set in stone yet. We've got a show in a couple months in Spartanburg, and we're gonna be playing with this band, Moyanak. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but they are from like the Triangle area in North Carolina, and they are sick. I've had their records since they came out, and their bass player reached out to me and asked if we want to play it, and I was like, yeah, dude. Like I literally like spin your records, all the time. So really stoked about that. And then we're trying to get, we don't want to be one of those bands that plays the same place every weekend, because that just gets boring. So we're trying to book more, house shows, abandoned garage shows, whatever. Just keep it interesting. we're not planning on playing Columbia more than once a month, as sort of a general rule. So
That's awesome. Yeah. I've been wanting to come out to one of y'all's shows. I just can't. I've just been like busy every time y'all got one, but I'll definitely make time for one of these coming up.
if you do, come up and holler at me.
Will do. No. But yeah,
Is that a Eli Cantor painting in the back
it's
behind
a
your head?
it's a Bell Witch.
Okay, I think that is. Sorry to derail things for a second. I'm pretty sure that's Eli Cantor.
Yeah, I forget the artist name. I really like his stuff though.
It could be Marcus Lane Drewski.
Yeah, I think that's him.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
I'm an idiot. I knew it was one of those guys that does this big epic. Yeah, I think he did the album cover for Stygian, which came out last year. It was really cool.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry for diverting. I just saw that in the background. I was like, that style looks familiar.
Yeah. I guess like while we're on the topic of like kind of album art and stuff like that, like where did like y'all's like kind of album art come from? Because like it seems like a pretty like interesting like kind of picture in the background. Like how did y'all like go about getting that?
So I found this this book, and it's called like Abnormalities and Deformities of the Spine. And it was literally just like a physician's textbook, and basically giving names to all these like spinal deformities. And I thought that a lot of the pictures were kind of like a combination of like sad, and also like kind of beautiful. Like a lot of it looked like they were like posed models, but really like, there were people that couldn't stand up straight. And so the pictures from that, and then I just did a little like digital painting around the edges. And then our logo is from this artist that goes by Moonroot. His name's Viltek. Really talented guy. He's done a bunch of like great album artwork and band logos and stuff like that. And I hit him up a long time ago. I was like, "Will you make me this logo?" And he was like, "Yeah, what do you want in it?" And I was like, "Pine trees and cicadas." And he did a great job. I love it.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. What would you say like your main goal for like Prosperity Gospel as a band is? Like, do you view it as like kind of like your end goal, or is it just kind of for fun, or just like a step along the way?
My main goal of what to get out of it is just like personal satisfaction. Like I enjoy playing music, and I enjoy playing live shows and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say that it's fun for me. It's a little bit like stressful, and I go into like a little bit of like a zone while it's happening. So it's not like, I'm trying to think about something else that's fun. It's not like playing kickball and it's just this joyous, goofy thing, but it is like deeply satisfying. So I mean, that's sort of what I get out of it. I mean, nobody's kidding themselves. You can't make money in the music industry, nor do I care to make that a goal. But on the other hand, I do want more people to listen to us, which means, I'd like to play more shows, play more different areas so more people can hear us. I'd like to put out more records. So it's not totally just like this internal, self-satisfying thing. Like I do want people to listen to it. And maybe that feeds into it, but there's like really like not much better than like people listening to it, being into it, getting messages on like Instagram from people that listen to the record and like it. Like that's, huge. I love that. Yeah, so I would say goal is just get more people to listen to it. I'm not trying to change the world. We are really philosophical, and this new record, whereas the first one I would consider like the summation of a lot of sort of my philosophical takes on stuff, the second record is going to be, it's very political. All the lyrics have been written for it already. The vast majority of them have music as well. But it's basically the first half of it or so is kind of a deconstruction of Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord, which if you're not familiar, he was like early 60s but active into the 80s, Marxist, and he wrote with like sort of like more of a flair than a lot of other people did. It's half academic, half art, which I always really appreciated about him. And the other thing that I also appreciate about Guy Debord is that Society of the Spectacle is very sort of it's very like, it's written kind of like poems, but then he wrote a companion piece of it describing in like very clear detail like what he means by everything, which I think is awesome, because like I'm not about trying to be vague and not have people pick up what I'm saying. One thing that I can't stand is when bands put out records that don't publish the lyrics. I'm like, if you go on our Bandcamp, all the lyrics are there. If you buy the CD, every lyric is printed in it. So I think that's an important part of the whole package of what the music is. So anyway, so the first half of the record is sort of a dissection of Society of the Spectacle. We're calling it Society of the Spectral, because we're a metal band, we're allowed to be goofy once in a while. And we can put a skull on something if we want to. That's totally within our rights. And then the other half of it is sort of a marriage of that plus like more modern stuff, everything that's happened since the 80s, and it's sort of imagining a way out of this capitalist hellscape that we live in, and then some questionings of whether that's possible or not, which I'm not qualified to answer anyway, so it's more just musings on it. And then that's what we got going on right now. So it's cool. I really like it. It's some of my favorite music I've written, so I'm stoked on it.
Awesome. It's like, any word on when we might be able to hear some of that, like when that might get released?
Yeah, so we've been playing a good chunk of it at shows. We've been playing the first 3 songs off of the new record as it will be at shows. I think we're going to start recording this summer, and hopefully have a fairly quick we'll release it through Comfort Monk. So being half of Comfort Monk means that we don't have to wait on a bunch of like label delays and stuff. Once it's done, we can ship it off and get it made, and sort of just do the thing. I don't like waiting. Usually by the time I've like released a record, I'm like kind of tired of those songs already. I get very like impatient with stuff like that. So it'll come out as soon as we can finish rehearsals and finish recording it. It'll come out shortly after that. I'm considering doing it a Bandcamp only thing, because I hate Spotify and all of that. But on the other hand, you want people to listen to your music, and that's making it inaccessible for certain people. So I think we'll probably do a big release of it. I don't know if we'll make a CD or not. I like having the physical copies, but not many people listen to CDs. I think cassettes are stupid. go on record as saying that. I don't understand it. I say that sort of tongue in cheek because my Comfort Monk has released several records. I just personally don't have or released several cassettes. I just don't have a cassette player to listen to them. So I'm just salty. I just need to get a cassette player. Because I have some great records on cassette and no way to listen to them. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe if we love it, we'll put it on vinyl, but likely not. Yeah. That was maybe too long-winded of an answer to that question. Yeah. So sometime late summer, early fall, it should be out. Awesome. And the working title, like I said, is Society of the Spectral. I think it's probably going to be another 7-song record. You know, when your songs are like 5 and 6 minutes long, I don't want to listen to like 12 of them. You know what I mean? So that's what we shoot for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I love CDs and records too. So if y'all ever do end up like putting any of that out, I'll definitely jump on that. Yeah. So like, how is it like kind of being a part of like the South Carolina like black metal scene? Like, I really like don't know much about like that scene. Like, I'd imagine that it's not super huge. I'd love to know like your kind of opinions on that.
It's not. But you know, because you know, metal isn't very popular in general. Like extreme subgenres of metal are less popular. Some of the other things that people call us, a lot of people have said we're like doomy. Also, doom metal, not super popular, you know, of people under the age of like 35 or 40. So it's a small scene, which is great in some ways because it makes the scene sort of open itself to other people. You know, we just played a show with a sort of like metal tinged punk band, with a sort of like groove metal band that had some like new metal elements, and with a sort of like heavy 90s maybe like grunge influence band. And it's kind of like maybe if we were in a bigger scene, we would get more pigeonholed and we play on a show with 4 other post-black metal bands, which, you know, nobody wants to listen to the same thing for, you know, 6 hours of the night or 5 hours a night or whatever. So in some ways, I think it's a, you know, a benefit if we can play a show with a doom metal band and a death metal band and us. Like, I would consider that awesome. And I think, you know, listeners would probably get more out of that as well. So there's some strength in being a small scene. Really love the folks from Crypt with a K, out of Augusta. We played a show with them a couple months back, like a thrash metal band, and they're awesome. And we've met all sorts of great people through it. Trying to play, there's a new band out of Charleston called Serpent Church, and they're sort of like stoner doom metal. And I was like, we have to play a show just so we can have a show that's prosperity gospel and Serpent Church. But they're awesome. They just released like their first single. Yeah. So the scene's small, but you know, people that like it are, you know, showing up and engaging. So
yeah, for sure.
Can't complain.
Do you have any like favorite local bands, like of just any genre?
Yes. So I love Dear Blanca. Maybe biased, but their live record that they put out, I guess last year, I think is one of the best live recorded performances I've ever heard. And I say that like without bias, like it's still, you know, in like my top 5 along with like Thin Lizzy and stuff. But yeah, I would say them. And I can't believe I'm like blanking right now. Yeah, there's all sorts of good stuff. I really like Flippants. The sort of hard to describe, maybe aggressive new wave, for lack of a better term. You'll probably hate me for saying that. I don't know how to describe it. Sort of like a post-punk, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they have a show coming up soon. It's some like, I know there's like some sort of little, it's like old event going on and they're playing it, but I just recognized the name. I've never listened to them before. I'll give them a
They're
listen.
awesome. You should listen to it. They have some great recordings. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I do listen to like a lot of, like black metal and other associated stuff, a lot of death metal. But honestly, like a lot of what I listen to is just like super mainstream. Courtney Barnett, Mountain Goats, stuff like that. So I won't be the person that has like the keys to all of the, the secret greats. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like, what do you like listening to most like right now? Like,
let's see. I've been revisiting the Tomb Mold record from a couple years ago. It is insanely good. I don't know if you listen to them. Really like interesting compositionally, death metal, with like sort of like some sludgy parts. And their whole discography is really good. But when their last record came out, Planetary Clairvoyance, a few years ago, I listened to it like every day for like 6 months or something, and then just had to stop. So I've been revisiting that, and that's been killer. I've also been listening to, Andy Schoaf. He's like a singer-songwriter. I think he's Canadian, if I'm not mistaken. But he put out a really popular record a couple years ago called Neon Skyline. And he just recently put out a bunch of sort of like more stripped back, like demo-y tracks that were songs for Neon Skyline that didn't make it on the record. And it sounds amazing. It's a great record. It doesn't sound like a B-side collection. Like it sounds like its own, fully formed record. But it's just really minimalist. It's like sort of like riffy acoustic guitar and like, like real dry drums. It's great.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that's all I got. Is there anything else you want to add?
Not really. If this is time for plugs, I would say find us on Instagram. We are prosperity and then 3 underscores gospel. So prosperity _ gospel. We're also on Bandcamp. It's just prosperity-gospel.bandcamp. Yeah, and we're of course on everything else like Spotify, Apple Music, 10 other platforms that you probably haven't heard of before. And I'd like to shout out to the Anti-Fascist Black Metal Network. They really put us on hard when we started out. We got on their a song on their compilation record that they did a couple months ago, and they've just been really supportive. And I've found sort of like a community of other, like leftist, extreme metal bands, some of whom have become, for lack of a better term, like pen pals through that. So they're definitely cool. Check them out. They upload records to YouTube a lot. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for asking me. Thanks for being interested.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Oh yeah. Have a good day, Trevor.
You too.